Hello, and welcome to Sonata She Wrote. This week, I'm examining the entirety of Cristoph Friedrich Ernst Weyse's 8th Piano Sonata in G minor. Weyse, though born in what's currently Germany, a borough of Hamburg called Altona, is mostly thought of as a Danish composer who lived from 1774 to 1842. Altona, and Hamburg at large, were in a personal union with Denmark at this time, which is a union between one country and another that is not formal, but rather the product of sharing a monarch. Although Weyse initially attempted to study with C.P.E. Bach, who was Kapellmeister in Hamburg, he was rejected. The reasons why aren't clear, but they might be related to Karl's advanced age. He would have been in the final years of his life. Weyse went on to study with a composer named Schultz and then make his way to Copenhagen in the 1790s. Weyse is considered to be part of the Danish Golden Age, which I think is most known for visual artists such as Christopher Wilhelm Eckersberg, but it was a time of flourishing arts generally in Denmark, including architecture, literature, and of course, music. In Weyse's article in the New Grove Dictionary, Jens Peter Larsen writes that Weyse was a conservative by nature. Weyse was rooted in 18th century musical ideas, extending from Bach and Handel to Gluck and Haydn, but not beyond Mozart, and he did not sympathize at all with the new trends in Beethoven's work. I don't really want to tangle with Larsen, who is a Danish musicologist and, anyway, died the year I was born, but I would say that statement is meant more to conjure an idea of a person rather than be taken as a factual statement. Bach and Handel would certainly be looking to the past, but Gluck, though 30 years younger than Mozart, died only a few years before him, and Haydn survived them all, living until 1809. If Weyse is basing his style on Handel, Mozart, and Haydn, he did sympathize with Beethoven, who had all the same sympathies, intentionally or otherwise. As for this piano sonata, it's difficult to track down a composition date, but it seems to be part of a group of earlier works which Weyse wrote in Copenhagen no later than 1799. As a composer, Weyse would be more fondly remembered for his vocal works, from cantata to song, but this sonata is a skillful demonstration of his compositional prowess, even in his 20s. As I'll be analyzing the entire three-movement piece, the goal with the analysis of this first movement is to look for deformations which might carry through into the next two movements, both of which are in sonata form. The primary theme in this sonata is tightly organized, and, to my ear, somewhat orchestral. It occurs over what feels like two distinct registers. After this cadence, which is blocked by this passing tone in C, Weyse leaps into the upper register and makes his way to an eventual half cadence. The transition has a similar phrase structure. Based on the primary theme, it ratchets up the harmonic tension and modulates into the major mediant of B flat. It's nothing to worry about yet, but notice how all the cadences in this piece occur, or, as in the case of the first cadence, are blocked by suspensions. The initial 4-3 suspension stood in the way of a midway cadence in the primary theme, which did eventually cadence with the cadential 6-4 progression. But if you've seen my video on the cadential 6-4, you know it's not a tonic chord to a dominant chord, but rather two suspensions, 6 and 4, which resolve to the 5th and 3rd of a dominant chord. The medial caesura is clearly articulated, so let's take a look at the secondary theme. Although small, I do think there is a relationship between this secondary theme and the initial primary theme. The accompaniment is the same Alberti bass, obviously, but also look at the shape and the rhythm. The primary theme has a pickup, whereas the secondary theme seems to be late. You can see the rhythmic shape of a pickup, but it's happening on the end of beat 1 instead of the end of beat 4. Perhaps uncomfortable in the narcissism of small differences, the S theme undergoes a dramatic harmonic transformation under this held tonic note, which manages to reach a perfect authentic cadence immediately. Weyse, however, apparently feels it's somewhat unearned, as he repeats the same process with a heightened sense of drama. Still though, the cadence is reached and the closing section sounds over a tonic pedal, an aftermath of the secondary theme echoing to the close. In a sonata form, there's nothing like the hope that's given by the structure of promise in an 18th century sonata. This transformation into the major mediant, rather than the dreaded minor dominant key, gives the entire movement an impetus. Hope that the secondary theme will maintain its major mode in the recap and will triumph over evil. The development will give us a clue as to how vicious the struggle will be. This sense of narrative struggle as a piece in sonata form unfolds, an unspoken but present sense of a protagonist and an antagonist. This is what sets Weyse's sonata forms apart from other quote-unquote Kleinmeisters. An awareness that the sonata form is not a simple series of boxes to check which will fill the duty of a first movement form, but rather a complex process which is fundamentally a strategy to communicate narrative. As we'll soon see, there's nothing Klein about this sonata cycle. The primary theme's small cells perfectly match Weyse's developmental strategy of modulatory sequences. There are no truly articulated cadences. Most of the chords which function as dominant are in first inversion, which lends an unstable, freely roaming character to the primary theme. Weyse is moving through tonal areas at a breakneck speed, but skillfully enough that one can just enjoy the ride. The transition is next and gets a similar treatment. At first, it even appears in a bright G major. Will the secondary theme make an appearance, or will this development be dominated by the primary theme? Always an ill omen in minor mode sonatas. Oof, no secondary theme in the development, and even more ominously, this P seems more harmonically secure than it appeared in the exposition. Although a suspension still blocks a cadence midway, Weyse has dispensed with the cadential 6/4 half cadence and opted for a secondary dominant, strongly articulating the half cadence directly on the downbeat. The transition, without a break in the music for it to launch out of, as in the exposition, is more angular than before, and Weyse increases the tension by sending it into a much higher register. Tragically, the secondary theme is in the minor mode, but perhaps there's a glimmer of hope. Where in the exposition there was a PAC, this theme has its cadence blocked by the deceptive motion in the bass. The theme seems to be rebelling against its own fate and attempting to flash back into the major key. Although there are some initial tonicizations of major 6, the movement ultimately comes to a powerful cadence in G minor. For the 18th century, which remember is still solidly in the classical period, a tragic ending is obviously not impossible. We just saw one. But it is a deformation. A comedic narrative archetype where the minor mode is vanquished by the subversive major secondary theme would be the norm. In terms of the entire cycle of this sonata, Weyse is setting us up to wonder whether this entire structure will flame out in tragedy, or if the major mode will eventually triumph in the movements to come. There is one other repetitive deformation that I've noticed about this movement that sticks out compared to an archetypical sonata. Although obviously the sonata had successful EECs and ESCs, I noticed that Weyse has a tendency to block cadences, either with suspensions or with a deceptive cadence as in the recap. A blocked cadence, especially at crucial moments like the medial caesura or essential cadences, can throw a form into disarray. This series is all being released on the same day, so head over to my channel to find the playlist which includes all 3 movements and give it a watch or save it to your watch later. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and give it a like and comment below to tell me what you thought. If you'd like to support the channel even more, head over to my Patreon for some bonus material.